March 8, 1970. Lyons Drag Strip, Long Beach, California. Don Garlits stages Swamp Rat 13 for the final run of the day. He drops the hammer, the experimental 2-speed transmission sitting between his legs. Let's go. The car does not crash. The car comes apart, cut in two right behind the engine, with Garlits still strapped into the half that slams back onto the pavement. Shrapnel strays into the crowd and nearly severs a teenage boy's arm. Half of Big Daddy's right foot is gone before the dust settles. Every safety rule in a racing rulebook is an accident report written backwards. This is the story of the rules for one part, the spinning steel bar under the floor that nobody thinks about until the day it gets loose. The driveshaft has one job: carry every ounce of engine power from the transmission to the rear axle. To do that job, a steel tube spins at thousands of RPM just inches beneath the driver, held at each end by universal joints about the size of your fist. As long as both joints hold, it is the most boring part on the car. The moment one lets go, physics takes over. And physics has two favorite tricks. Trick 1, the front joint fails, the shaft drops, digs into the racing surface, and becomes a pole planted under a car moving more than 100 miles per hour. Racers call it pole vaulting. It means exactly what it sounds like. Trick 2, the shaft snaps and thrashes inside the tunnel like a steel bullwhip, chewing through floors, brake lines, and anything else within reach. Sometimes it leaves the car entirely and lies on the racing surface, waiting. Drag racing learned all of this earlier and bloodier than anybody. The classic slingshot dragster put the driver at the very back of the car, straddling the driveline. The engine, the clutch, and the transmission sat inches ahead of him, and the spinning connection to the rear axle ran directly between his knees. The layout made sense for traction. It also made the driver the crumple zone. Through the late 1960s, clutches and drive lines let go with sickening regularity. Mike Sorokin, John Mulligan, names the sport still mourns. Then at the 1970 Nationals, Jim Nicholls' clutch exploded at over 200 miles per hour and sawed his dragster in half right beside Don Prudhomme at the finish line.
Nicholls off first. Side by side. Prudhomme. Oh my God.
Prudhomme believed he had just watched his friend die on national television. Nicholls survived the tumble. The message survived too. Garlits received that message in a hospital bed in Long Beach, missing part of his foot, watching Star Trek episodes with fellow racer Tom McEwen between visits. And instead of designing a stronger transmission, he asked a better question. Why is the driver sitting in the blast radius at all? From that bed, he sketched Swamp Rat 14, engine behind the driver. Every explosive component moved aft, where a failure sprays parts of the sky instead of at a human being. The magazines called the layout a dead end. His first time out at Lyons, he lost. Then he took Swamp Rat 14 to the 1971 Winter Nationals and won the whole thing. Within 2 years, the front-engine top-fueled dragster was extinct. Garlits never fixed the part. He moved the man. For every other car that kept its driveline up front, NHRA wrote hardware into the rulebook, and the words read like an accident report in reverse. A retainer loop, 1/4-inch steel, 2 inches wide, wrapped a full 360 degrees around the shaft, mounted within 6 inches of the front universal joint. So the day that joint fails, the shaft falls about an inch into a steel cage instead of a mile into the asphalt. Then comes the sentence for anyone who still doubts what this rulebook has seen. Any open driveline passing any part of the driver's body must be completely enclosed in steel plate. Nobody writes that line from imagination. And this rulebook does not stay at the professional level. It follows you home. Run quicker than a 13.99 quarter mile on slicks at any NHRA track, or 11.49 on street tires, and your car needs a loop. Your street car, the one with the child seat in the back. A tech inspector will crawl under it at a Tuesday test and tune, checking a rule that other men paid for half a century ago. Stock car racing wrote its own chapter, and you can spot this one from the grandstands. Open a NASCAR-sanctioned rulebook, from weekly late models and hobby stocks up through the modifieds, and the driveshaft section reads nearly the same everywhere. Steel shaft, minimum diameter around 2.5 inches, 1 or 2 full hoops of 1/4 inch by 2-inch steel. The hoops do the same job as NHRA's loop. When a universal joint quits in turn 3 on a Saturday night, the shaft drops an inch, lands in the steel, and rides there while the driver coasts to the apron instead of riding a pole into the fence. And then comes the strange rule.
The drive shaft must be painted white. Not a suggestion, not tradition, a requirement carrying the same weight as roll cage tubing specs. So why white? Think about what a drive shaft looks like when it leaves a car in traffic. A dark steel bar lying on dark asphalt, dead ahead of a pack closing at more than 100 miles per hour. Black on black is invisible until it is under your tires or through your windshield. White shows up from a corner worker's stand and from inside a helmet. The paint does not prevent the failure, it announces it. Keep reading the same page and the philosophy repeats. Added ballast must be painted white too, with the car number written on it. Everything heavy enough to kill has to be visible on the track and traceable to the car that dropped it. NASCAR does not trust the part to stay attached. NASCAR plans for the day it doesn't. Lose your weight on the track at a sanctioned bull ring and the tech shed can disqualify you for the night. The sport punishes the drop, not just the failure. Which raises the real question. Of all this hardware, the loops, the straps, the plates, the paint, which rule saved the most lives? None of them. The most effective driveline safety device in motorsport is the seating chart. When Garlits moved the engine behind the driver, he accomplished what no bracket ever could. He took the human being out of the line of fire completely. And a modern top-fuel dragster takes his idea to its logical end. The engine sits so close to the rear axle that the drive shaft disappeared entirely. 11,000 horsepower. And no spinning steel bar anywhere near the driver, because there is no spinning steel bar at all. Drag racing's ultimate drive shaft rule turned out to be simple. Do not have one. The short tracks and the street cars still do, so the loops stay bolted in and the paint stays white, and every Saturday night at every bull ring in America, a spinning steel bar hums along under a few hundred floorboards, one universal joint away from its old tricks. The rule book's job was never to stop the part from breaking. Its job is to make sure a broken part costs an afternoon instead of a funeral. Garlits went back to Lyons with the safe car and lost his first race in it. The hot rod magazines nodded along. They knew a dead end when they saw one. 2 years later, there was not a single front-engine top-fuel car left to race against. Big Daddy gave the sport its greatest safety part, and it never needed paint or steel. It was an empty space where the driver used to sit.